Yeah. I mean, I would like to go a little bit deeper on maybe just a few other things, like maybe like, I know there's probably a bunch, but maybe like two or three other things that are like, these are common things that are concerns for people when they're in that early retirement phase. Like, so medical insurance is one of them for sure. Taking money out, like that's always like, I've been putting money in this whole time. Now I got to take money out. What is that? So like any, like maybe only one or two, like what are some other thoughts about some fears or some of the things like that to make that jump into early retirement?
So one thing that's actually, it's really important and non-technical. I mentioned earlier, your physical, mental, spiritual, relational, financial wellness are interrelated. So the biggest thing that I see is people they spend a few decades like on the path to early retirement. And then when they get close to retirement, they're really focused on what they're retiring from, but they haven't thought about what they're retiring to. Or they're thinking about retirement, but they're only thinking about the financial aspect of retirement, right? That's why they reach out to me. They're like, let's look at the spreadsheet again. They've looked at the spreadsheet over and over again to see if it works. But they're forgetting about, okay, what does my physical, mental, spiritual, relational wellness look like, right? Mm-hmm. So besides all the technical stuff that, again, you can figure that out. You can work with a professional, you can learn it yourself, but really focusing on your relationships, focusing on like not losing if you're into like any type of spiritual practice, like don't let those things sit on the back burner so long that by the time you get to retirement, this is really what happens. People get to early retirement. They have all the money they could ever want to, meet their desired lifestyle needs. But they have all this money in their hand. They turn around and their physical health, their mental health, their relationships, their spiritual practices, like they kind of just drop the ball on those. And if you imagine if you retired, and most people say as soon as they retire, they call them the go-go years. There's the go-go, the slow-go, and the no-go years. And the go-go years are like, oh, we want to travel the world. We want to go on Viking cruises. We want to go to every island of Hawaii, like in 1 year. We want to have, a lot of fun. But yet they haven't been taking care of their physical body or their mental or their mind, right? So they have all this money, but they don't have actually like the physical mental capacity to actually do the things that they've been saving decades to do. Like that is much more sad to me than having, not quite having enough money, to get dessert at a restaurant, right? Like it's really going back to say, not just what do I want to spend my money on, but what do I want myself to look like, physically, mentally. I personally, in terms of vulnerability, I go to counseling weekly. I spend $500 a month to see a mental health counselor. I spend $500 a month on a business coach. But it's not just about the money, right? It's about just taking care of myself, because why save for a future where I'm not going to be healthy enough to actually enjoy all that stuff I've saved for?
Wow. That makes me think about an earlier podcast that we had too with Kaipo Kroll talking about retirement insights and just really taking, understanding like it's not just about the money. There's so many soft parts of this that are equally, or in some cases more important than the actual dollars for sure. But yeah, Jason, I'm going to throw it over to you. Just love to hear some thoughts or things that are going on in your mind.
No, I think that's super important. I like everything we're talking about, and I think people do get wrapped up in the spreadsheets and kind of lose track of everything else. No, it's all great stuff. I was thinking of making a pivot here and maybe talking about keeping it local. Cody, what are your thoughts on trying to achieve FIRE in these high cost of living areas like Hawaii? And in Hawaii also, I mean, unfortunately, there's a housing shortage, real estate is going through the roof. And I'm sure with a lot of people you've interacted with, and I hope this isn't the case for our listeners here, you see a lot of people probably move from a high cost of living area to a low cost as a means to achieve FIRE. I don't know if that's something you've seen, and I hope that doesn't happen to any of our listeners. But being in a high cost of living area, is it just a matter of scaling the numbers up, or is there anything to consider there?
Yeah, I think that when, the things I know about Hawaii when I went there, definitely the cost of housing. So if you think about like the biggest things on your budget, right? Your housing, your transportation, taxes, right? Actually, even right there, right? So sometimes if you're working in a state like Hawaii with state income tax, right? You might be thinking even more so about like some of the tax deferral options of making traditional pre-tax contributions to retirement accounts. Not that that's the way everybody should do it, but I'm thinking about ways that the more income you make, the more you should be looking at opportunities to defer that income into the future, not just saving federal income tax, but also on state income tax. In terms of housing, that can be tough, right? Some people, they might stay in a high cost of living area on the path to early retirement, but they might share housing, or they might buy a dual, like, or a family unit. They might buy a duplex. And some people even rent out. I know in Hawaii, there's a lot of people who rent out like part of their home, or maybe they have like, one home on this side of the street and the other half on the other side of the street, and they rent it out to tourists. I know that there's a lot of money to be made in tourism. It's probably also, there's a lot of demand, and I don't know if the supply is there at this point for that, but I think it's thinking creatively about ways to reduce the expenses on your biggest things, right? So if your housing and transportation is taking up, 80% of your budget, like it's probably, it's probably worth considering, like, are there alternatives there? I know in terms of community, I'm sure in terms of Hawaii, are there a lot of families living together in terms of like, multi-generational family situations?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that. There's a lot of investors buying real estate for rental income, but it's kind of to the detriment of some of the first time home buyers and people trying to break into that housing market. So the housing market here, I wouldn't say it's unique. It's probably similar to, your New York Cities, your San Franciscos, and just the high cost of living areas in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I do say, a lot of people think about real estate. They have this debate on, is it an investment or not? I've always said that your housing is a lifestyle decision first. A house is a lifestyle decision, not an investment. Yes, it might appreciate in value or depreciate in value, right? But you choose where you want to live based on your desired lifestyle as a family. And you said earlier, getting out of the spreadsheets. I think it is important to know your numbers. Like, it is important to understand how much you're spending on housing. But one of the heuristics I talk about, or just the frameworks I talk about, is a lot of us, we try to fit our life into the numbers rather than fitting the numbers into our life. So I think if you're, by listening to this, think about negotiating top down rather than bottom up. And what I mean by that is, like, pretend for just 1 week, right? Imagine you have a blank 7-day calendar, 24-hour-a-day calendar, and you have all the money you could ever need, and you have no commitments to a job. Fill out that calendar. I know, Paul's like, oh, that felt good just to think about. Right? Imagine filling out this blank calendar of how do you want to spend that week together as a family? So write down about what types of things would you be doing? Where would you be going? Like, where are you going out to eat? Are you cooking at home? Like, talk about how do you want to spend time as a family? And then what's cool is, now that you kind of design this desired lifestyle without money, without work being a part of the plan, now you can kind of like lay over the reality of work and money on top of that. You can say, okay, what I find is that a lot of people, they try to fit their family into their work calendar, right? Than trying to fit their work into their family calendar, right? And not necessarily that you can just, like, not everybody can negotiate like, their hours at work, but just having the mindset of saying, I'm going from the top down. I'm going to design our ideal lifestyle as a family, have these conversations as a family. And then only at that point am I going to place restrictions on myself. So don't just look at the bank account and say, okay, what can I do with the money there? Dream big, and then only from there step down. And I think some people might say, like, that's kind of dangerous. Like, why would I dream of this like huge, extravagant? Because your desired lifestyle, by the way, could be expensive, right? Sure. You'd say, well, why would you even let me dream? And the reason I tell you to dream is that if you let your money dictate your life, again, it's that place where you're going to look back in retirement. You're going to look back and be like, wow, like, I wish that I didn't have to wait till retirement to finally have the desired lifestyle I want. And I've met people. I mean, not necessarily in Hawaii, but I've met people who as a household, even with multiple kids, make $40,000, $50,000, right? Like with more joy, like more passionate about having greater alignment of their family's unique values and desired outcomes in alignment with their spending than I do with people who are making $1 million. They're stressed all the time. They have all the money in the world, but but they're not thinking about, again, they've designed their life around their money rather than designing their life and then saying, how can I plug the money in? So the last thing to say on that is when you're thinking about a high cost of living area, I would never tell somebody to leave a high cost of living area to a low cost of living area. Not just like, do not move just for taxes, right? Even if your income taxes are going to be lower somewhere else, they're going to hit you with something else, whether it's property taxes, state, like you're going to pay your taxes no matter where you go. But lastly there, if the only reason I tell somebody to move from a high cost of living to a low cost of living is if they've actually explored all those other options of how they could live, how they could maybe share a place, maybe rent, again, share rent, have a roommate, right? Some people would rather have 3 roommates and still live in Hawaii than move to some like podunk town in the middle of the US and have none, like where none of their family lives, none of their friends live, right? So yeah, don't eliminate your family and friends and your desired lifestyle first. Like design your life around that and then plug in the numbers and see what works.
The opinions and statements presented on this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Never make any investment or financial decisions based on information offered on this show without first consulting your financial, legal, or tax advisor. All economic and performance information mentioned on the show is historical in nature and is not indicative of any future results. All indices mentioned on this show are unmanaged and cannot be invested in directly. All information is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. Lastly, all opinions expressed by Jason Cutitta and any guests on the show are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of or are endorsed by ToBA Financial. For Jason Cutitta, investment advisory services are offered through ToBA Financial LLC, a registered investment advisor offering advisory services in the state of Hawaii and in other jurisdictions where exempt from registration.